Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it is Thursday. It is July, I believe this is July the 6th, and this will be our chart lesson for the day. And it is Thursday, so this will wrap up our week. No chart lessons on Fridays. Um, Here's a quick look at our daily chart. As you can see, um, we had a huge sell-off that bounced right off the midline, and we rallied really strongly. Today was a great trading day. There were so many simple, easy to find setups. It just was a really great trading day, the kind of day that, hey, if you're still trading and you get a good setup off a key entry point, you probably want to take it. We'll see that shortly, but the sell-off had a few trades, but the rally had some really nice trades and great second entries right off a key entry point. Real simple kind of trading, the basic stuff, the kind of days you want to see, and it just keeps climbing. Um, so it's one of probably the better trading days we've had in a while. So when you get these kind of days, embrace them and try to take advantage of. But there it is. You can see the big day on the daily. This is the daily chart, and this dark purple is the midline. And it's just a 21-day EMA is basically what that is. And you can see we bounced right off of it, looks like, and rallied strongly. Didn't take it all back, but it was a really strong day for such a to start out so bearish. So this market just does not want to go down. Even when it's overbought, it seems to want to go up. But so don't argue with it. When you get the rallies, whether it's down or up, you just go with them. But let's flip over to the intraday chart. There's quite a few trades today, so it'll take a few more minutes to go through them than usual. But again, it's a really nice trading day. But let's flip over and take a look at that 2,000 tick intraday chart. And here's a real high level look at it. You can see the two-tiered channel working down. We had a break, and prices really struggled to make a new low there. They eventually went lower, and then once we got a new low in place, when you get a retest, normally you'll notice I don't draw the channel, but when you get a retest, it just keeps trending. Look for a channel. If you see one, draw it, and you can see here we got a break, move to a new low, and this thing rallied out of here. This was a really great trend up, and same thing happened here. We got a break, and it just folded over into another rally, just continued to go. It looks like we got an overshoot here to me, which led to it trading down into the close, and we just kind of traded sideways from there. So we took about half of this down move back. But this is a real these are both real strong trends. When you start to see all these little, let me show you, little bars with stems on each side, dojis, and the corrections are very shallow like that. Same thing right in here. This last part of this trend was really strong until we got the break and the move to the new low. This first part was real strong here as well. So just a really great trading day. So we don't get this many trend. It's not often you get a strong trend down and then a strong trend back. Usually you'll get one direction or the other, and then maybe it flattens out or you get a little rally. But we got a real strong trend in both directions today. So needless to say, it was a pretty nice day. Anyway, let's go through the chart here. 7 o'clock came as we were starting to go lower here, and then of course we had this news item. We had one at 7:15 and one at 1:30, so I just kind of marked that out. It's a little congested. Wouldn't have amounted to much anyway, and then it didn't last long. Then we dropped out of here, and you get a first entry and a second entry. I probably should have only drawn this over to about right there. Actually, I think what I was trying to draw it to was 7:30. Where was 7:35 or so? We'll get this right because I don't want to confuse anybody. Yeah, 7:34 right in there. So this should have come down to about right here, like so. But you could clearly see that it wasn't going to have much effect by that point at 7:30 when nothing was happening, and you got a second entry short right off the key entry point. You are a little ways away from the EMA, but that's clearly a good trend, and that confirms it in the second entry. The key is, do you have enough room to get out before this low? Which you do. So I like taking that trade. You might argue that's could be green, but I like it. It's right off this secondary key entry point, and we haven't reached the lows again. We just came off the highs, so there's still plenty of room. And notice where we went, right to the lows before we bounced. And then this was only a first entry here, and it's right off the midline. Another first entry short, and then we're just kind of chopping sideways here. So you got to be real careful here. It was pretty obvious we might go lower because notice how each high is lower every time. We just could not get through the support. So until you get through the support, you don't know that prices are going to make it. But these are clear signals or clues that we're probably going to go lower. A really aggressive guy might take this trade right here. It's what, 5 ticks. I don't like marking it, but because it could still bounce on you and stop you out and then go exactly where you think. But it's pretty obvious this is going to break lower. And when it does, it takes off. And then we're just chopping sideways again. And you get a little second entry short here with with a double top there and a nice signal bar. I like that one. I mark this green because you're kind of in no man land. You've already come off the lows, and then we turn down at the midline, but we're getting back over in here, and we're starting to not go as low. So that's showing a little strength. There's some, the market's not selling off as strong as it was, but the fact that this is sideways and that's a lower high here, I tend to like that. But I think you can only mark that green because it is a little aggressive. And of course we bounce off the midline again. We run up, we get a break, which is a first entry. You run up, make a new high, and you get another second entry short right at the key entry point. You can argue there's a double top there, maybe even a triple test. I like that one. There's also a failed second entry long here. I did not mark this trade because it closed inside and a little bullish, which the bullish part doesn't matter on a failure. But I think you're taking a chance going short there. It's another one you might argue to be green. Actually, never mind. The reason I didn't mark that one was because it was falling in that window of another news item. We had a 9 o'clock, 9 o'clock news items, so I think we were into about 8:50 by that time. I started this at 8:50 here, so that would rule that out. I think you have to be careful there. And then by 9:03 or 4, it was obvious it wasn't going to be anything crazy going on, and you get a lower high right here, right off the key entry point with another bearish bar. So I like that one. And you actually get another second entry here. Notice the low, and you get a first entry, second entry. It's a little sideways, a little congested, but this is starting to look like a really strong trend. So it's right off the key entry point. It's a very bearish bar. Maybe you take that trade. I think you're being a little risky there when you've had some pretty good setups already. So maybe you don't take that trade, but I marked it. And if you notice, you come down here, you finally get a close outside. You run up, you get a first entry and a close outside. It's hard to say here if that's the way this channel looks to me, but it might have been like this. Either way, you still get a close outside, move to a new high, and a second entry short after the first break of a trend channel that's been a very bearish and strong trend. So I like taking that. If you wait a few minutes later, you actually get a break higher here. It's very minor, but it's a first entry and then a second entry. So that's a failure, a failed second entry long, and a big bearish bar and another chance to enter. And then we're just kind of working sideways here. So I don't really see anything that I like across here because of all the support. You got to be careful going short in that. You might have looked at this as a break. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Notice you got a little congestion here, and then you break out. So you might have looked at that as a failed breakout. The problem is it doesn't make an equal high, so I don't think you want to go short there. It makes a lower high here, but again, not a very good signal bar. This is like the other one. We're starting to, it looks like, you're making lower lows and lower. So this is almost a repeat pattern. When it pushes below and comes back and gives you a second entry right off the key entry point, You can see that in a big bearish bar like that. You actually might have thought about entering um, on the engulfing bar, but with it being right at the support, I think you should wait and make sure this closes bearish. And it's still a little iffy, but it is a second entry. Notice the new low, first entry, second entry, right off a key entry point. Personally, when this closed like that, I'd probably take that trade. But either way, a few minutes later, it comes back up. You get a first entry, and it never really breaks lower, but you get those 2-bar matching highs. So really, that's a second attempt to go higher. And what does it do? It turns down right off the key entry point again with another hugely bearish bar. I like going short on that one because actually you could call this a double bottom, and this is a first entry, second entry right there. So I like going short right there. I don't see any reason why you can't. As long as you got room before that low, take that trade. There's a lower high here. I wasn't crazy about it because now it looks like, hey, we're finding some support here. Maybe there's a double bottom. But you also could maybe even say, okay, this just looks like a first entry, second entry with 2 legs down. And you might look at it as a failure. So it's another possibility. But I'm not as crazy about that one. That one scares me there. We've already got the close outside. We've already got a new low. And this thing's probably going to reverse at any moment. So you got to be really careful here. And then, of course, it comes up. You get a close outside. And you get a first. Actually, technically, this is a second entry short. Let me show you why. Notice the new low you're working up. And you get a break lower right there first. And then it turns higher. And then it comes back past again. So technically that's a second entry short. It looks like it's also a triple test, and it's a very bearish bar. I meant to mark that at least green. I was thinking about that one, and I wanted to come back, and I forgot to mark it. I'm going to just leave it green. But honestly, I like that trade. You could almost argue for that to be red. Like I said, it's a triple test. And it's a second entry short. It's a little convoluted. The only problem with the second entry is it looks a little congested too. So it's one you got to think about a little bit. But that's clearly a good trend channel, and you're probably going to try to attempt a retest of the low. So look at that one how you may, but it should be at least green. Then of course we find some support here. You don't want to get long in here yet. There's 2 sideways, and there's acceptance of prices there rather than rejection so far. You finally get some rejection here. But this is a double bottom, and you get a first entry, second entry that bounces right off the key entry point, big bullish bar. If it breaks higher, it's going to be a failure. You're probably going to trap some people and get a quick scalp out of it. I really thought it would take on off quicker and steeper than that. But needless to say, it ends up with a very strong channel here. You get another bounce right here, and you might even call that a triple test. I think you're still pressing it. I mean, this doesn't necessarily look like a strong trend yet. It looks like prices are struggling to go higher, but there's your key entry point. It bounces right off of it. Here's your support. You got a triple test across there. So if you're paying attention, you see that, maybe you take that trade. You're not going to get a good big run or anything, but you get a quick, easy scalp out of it. But notice what happens. Then you get a triple test across here, and you bounce right off the key entry point with another nice signal bar. It actually breaks lower, fails, turns up, and goes out the other side. I might even trade that. That makes that a second entry long as well. Notice your new high, first entry, second entry. I might actually trade that one on the engulfing bar because of the triple test and the second entry. But generally, you're better to wait. Make sure it's going to close positive, and if it does, maybe you go long above it. There's a higher low here, but I really thought that should take off, and so when it comes back there, I'm a little hesitant. But again, it's one you could consider and call it green. But there's been so many good trades. When you're having a day like this and these clear, tight channels with clear trend lines, just wait and be patient. But maybe you take that. Of course, it runs up to the other side. Now, what does it do? 2 legs back to the key entry point, the EMA. And look, you get a 4-tick signal bar. So you can enter that. You can stay with the 8-tick rule. I mean, that's the best of everything we do right there. And somebody else say, well, why didn't you draw the channel? There's the channel. Doesn't matter. On a trend like that, On a day like that's right off the key entry point, that's 2 legs back, I'm going to take it. I don't give a dang. It might fail, but I'm going to take it anyway. So you can't be afraid to pull the trigger when you get the good setups. Uh, and that's just basic 2 legs back, very very low risk, 4 ticks. I'm going to take it. For the scaredy cats, here comes your high or low. Take that one. Right off the key entry point again. Look at it go. I mean, it's obvious now. Look at all the stems. We just keep going higher. The corrections can't even make a new low. They're just going sideways, bouncing right off the key entry point. Very small. This is a strong trend now. So when you get a good setup, take it. What happens? We run to the high side, and you get 2 legs back, and there's another second entry. This only looks like 1 leg to me, so I'm counting that as a first entry. And your second entry here. Now, again, you might take that because it's a strong trend, and it's a great signal bar right off the key entry point. It's 8 ticks. Not very, I mean, there's not much risk in that. I mean, we're getting back to where we can even take, we're having a day here with a trend like this, and we can actually follow the 8-tick rule again. This one's only 6, so again, you can use the 8-tick rule. And again, I'll count that as the second entry. And off it goes again. Finally, you get a break here. What does it do? It gives you, the first break gives you a second entry long with 6 ticks. So again, you can follow the 8-tick rule on the second entry on the first break of a strong trend. Take these trades. This day was a gift. And I'm sure there's people that were scared of all these trades. They couldn't pull the trigger, and they probably pulled the trigger on something dumb like right here. Right into the highs. And that's what happens to you. You get scared to pull the trigger on the good ones. You talk yourself out of the best trades, and you talk yourself right into the worst trades. But there's a triple test. First entry, second entry, a strong trend, nice signal bar. This one went a little further, so sometimes you might want to say here, I want to wait on the high or low. But on a strong trend day like this, if you can get in the trade, take it. As you can see, it gaps over and keeps going. You may not have been able to get in that trade. And when it does that, drop a limit order where you'd want to get in, or maybe you're even willing to give a tick or whatever. On a strong trend day and you're trying to get in, you do what you got to do. But I wouldn't be afraid to take that trade right there. And actually, this is a failure. Notice the new low, first entry, second entry. That's probably going to trap some people, but there's not much room right there to that high, and that I don't know if there's enough room to get out. So that's the reason I did not mark that one. See, it's only 1 point. That's pushing it, especially when it looks a little congested. But when you get this triple test with plenty of room here to scalp out, take that trade. And of course, it comes back here. You got a trend working down. You need to close outside, new low, second entry long with another nice signal bar. I'm probably going to take that one too. You didn't really have the trend line yet. It doesn't come till here. Now that one looks a little congested, but it's a higher low, another great signal bar, another engulfing bar. Maybe you take that trade. And then if you wait a few minutes later, you get a failure right here. When it breaks above this bar, it's a failed second entry short. Just go with it. This one is a little close to the high as well, but we should be looking to come all the way back up to here. We haven't, this channel's been confirmed now, and it's in play, so we're not as worried about going long at the highs after a break in a new high. So I'd take that one. That's the difference between this one and the other one we talked about over here being close to the high. You've already had your break and you have a new high, so there's some risk in that one. Or here you got a brand new channel and your target's going to be up here at the trend channel line, so you got plenty of room to get there. And you don't want to go long up here. This to me looked like an overshoot. I believe it is an overshoot. And then we just turn and you can see it's the biggest correction so far of this whole afternoon rally, or whatever time it started, 10 o'clock, late morning into afternoon rally. And that takes us into 2:30. So just really great trading day. I mean, it's been a while since we've seen a day like this. very rare lately that you could have a trend day like this and still use the old 8-tick rule. When I say 8-tick rule, I'm talking about the safety stop rule. We pretty much had to throw that out the window with all the huge bars and stuff. But this is, I mean, we're getting a chance to reestablish that rule if you and take the trades like you're supposed to without having to worry about it. So anyway, there it is. Really great trading day, and we did have a few news items here. So be aware of those. They didn't seem to have much effect at all today. That won't always be the case. So when you start to not see much, if you don't see something happening in the first couple of minutes after the news, generally if you're going to have a huge move after a news item, it's instantly and you'll see it. But when you're going a minute or two or three and you don't see anything really different, and the market's still just kind of moving along like it was previously, and you're not getting these huge bars or any out of the ordinary size bars, then don't worry about it. Just go ahead and if you get a setup, take it. That's the way I approach it. So I would suggest you do the same. But there it is, folks. Great trading day. Hadn't had one like this in a while. It came at a good time. Hopefully you were able to take advantage of this. And you only need one or two of these. And some of these would have netted you some great runners too. Not all of them, but some of them would have netted a runner or two. And that really changes your math. Some of you that are right there at break even, if you could just learn to catch a good runner or two, it really changes your math for you considerably. So, but there it is. I'm not going to beat around the bush and carry it on. This is how I saw it today. Somebody else asked me about a trend that was working down across, I believe it was down through here somewhere, and I just couldn't get it to line up and look proper. This is how I played it. But if you were able to get a secondary trend down through, there's nothing wrong with playing that trend. So sometimes the price action will be a little different from chart to chart, depending on who your broker is and who your data provider is. I mean, the charts. The key is, do you end up at the same results? If you don't, then maybe your chart's off a little bit. Maybe you need to check your data, whatever. But generally, people send me their chart and they see something I don't see, but they usually get to the same place, and that's all that matters. If you end up with the same results, it doesn't matter how you see it, and that's not uncommon for a chart to be slightly different. And so one trader sees it a little different, but you really almost end up with the exact same trades and results and what you could have taken and so forth. So that's not a big deal. So don't let that bother you. The more you do this, the better you get at reading the chart, and the easier you'll start to see this stuff. It's like learning to read. When you first start reading, it's just stuff on a page. But you learn your ABCs, and then hey, you start to see some letters. You learn your basic words that you learned in first grade or whatever. See cat, see spot run or whatever, and you start to see those little basic words, and then eventually you can put a sentence together, basic sentences, and then reading this chart is just like that. I mean, when you first look at it, it's just a bunch of bars on a chart with no rhyme or reason. But you learn the rules, so you kind of know the rules kind of dictate what prices tend to do. So it kind of helps you to learn how to read it a little bit. And then you just get experience and time at the screen and watching it every day. And the next thing you know, you pick up a word or two. You start to see a setup or two or a pattern or two that you weren't noticing before. And just remember, we're not pattern traders. You can see the same pattern over and over, and it act totally different every time. It's amazing how many times somebody will send me two trades, and the pattern is exactly alike, but the context is nowhere near, and they'll say, well, what's the difference in this trade and the other? And it's just because they don't see the chart, they can't read the chart, they don't understand what the chart's telling them, and the patterns look exactly the same. So if you come in here and think you're going to be a pattern trader and try to do what we're doing, don't make that mistake, because the same pattern can work beautifully in one instance, and if the chart's telling you something different and you see that same pattern again, it could do something totally different. So don't get caught up in the thinking that there's no pattern that's going to ever make you consistent money. The closest pattern I can tell you that you may can get away with would be second entries. You're still going to have some losing second entries, but if you can find two-legged pullbacks that create a second entry off the key entry point EMA, you can make some money with it and still not be able to have still not know how to read this chart. So somebody always asks me, what's the bread and butter? If I wanted to learn one trade, what is it? It's second entries on two-legged pullbacks to the key entry point. And what is the key entry point? It's support and resistance. And just never forget that these trend lines are sloped or angled support and resistance. So they're no different than the sideways support and resistance. And if you learn to find them, you'll see, just look, every time prices came back to this trend line, they went higher. Where does all the magic happen? At the key entry points. Every time prices came back to that trend line, that's where the magic happened. Every time they came back to this trend line, that's where the magic happened. That's what you got to learn to spot. That's why you have to learn to draw these things, these trend channels and support and resistance and all that good stuff. So anyway, needless to say, I'm going to wrap it up. I hope you had a good trading day. I hope you took advantage of a day like this. And if you struggled, don't let it beat you up. Just keep studying and working and getting better, and that's how you get better at this. You don't let a setback get you. You study it, go study, figure out where you made your mistakes, and learn from them, and try to fix the problems. Try to the good things you did well, try to reinforce those and do them again. The places you messed up, try to figure out what you did wrong and where you got off, and try to correct that going forward. And if you do that every day, you'll get better at this. But if you come in here and you say, okay, I'm just going to come in here and trade, and you trade, and you did okay today and maybe you did bad today, and you don't study all that stuff and you just close up and go home, you're not going to get better at this. You'll make the same mistakes tomorrow and the same mistakes the next day. You've got to figure out, really the bottom line is you get better by studying your trades, figuring out your tendencies, and correcting your bad ones. That's what makes you a better trader. So anyway, we're almost 30 minutes here, so this is a long chart lesson compared to some of the past ones, but this is a good trading day, and it's probably worth some of the extra words in here today. But I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again next week. I'm done for today. This wraps up our week. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.